Yeah, this one was coming. This is the Arsenal reaction show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Raw Reaction Show, joining you the morning after the night before. A very disappointing result, of course, yesterday against West Ham. A real opportunity missed to close the gap to Liverpool before they take on Manchester City today, and brings to an end, of course, a run of fixtures where Arsenal have managed to go unbeaten for quite a considerable amount of time. That was the first league defeat, of course, suffered since that Newcastle loss at St James's Park a very, very long time ago. Indeed, it's going, man. I can't really. It's hard to be anything other than just entirely and utterly disappointed with yesterday. Not necessarily even because of the performance. Like, I'm disappointed just because of how predictable it was to see that coming. That we knew that this was like we knew, like, after January, the likelihood of Arsenal being able to score considerable numbers of goals was pretty slim. Particularly, obviously, after the injury to Kai Havertz. And when we lost Kai Havertz, the chances of Arsenal being able to score was very, very low. And it felt like that game against Leicester that we talked about, obviously, last week, the start of this week, papered over the cracks. Like those goals from Mikel Merino, you take out those two goals, and it's a very similar display. The only difference, I think, was Waneri's contributions during that game, hitting the bar, hitting the post from two moments of magic. Take away those moments, and the games are basically the same, except that West Ham don't take their chance that Leicester don't take the chance that they got when Lewis-Skelly kind of put the ball around the post. And yesterday, West Ham took the chance that they got. And the question was always going to be, when Arsenal go a goal down in their current state of play, how are they ever going to respond to it? At Newcastle, we go a goal down, we lose. And it's not entirely surprising that when we go a goal down in this game, that we also lose. And so for that reason, it's just not a surprise, I don't think, to anybody that result yesterday happened, and that yesterday was a real timid, lackluster, unimaginative, dull performance. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. I hope you're doing as well as you can do, of course. Really appreciate you all being here for what is, I hope, for many, a therapy session, a chance to vent, a chance to kind of get thoughts out there, a chance to be still sensible, of course. And when we're looking at, a result like that, it's always important for me to remind you to take breaks, to take a step away if you need to look after yourselves, because there's some pretty horrible people out there. Trust me. Yesterday, I experienced some of the worst abuse I think I've suffered since starting out doing this. So look after yourselves, stay safe and well, and take control of the controllables, which is, of course, your exposure to this stuff. Certainly advice I need to take myself. But we move. Let's go into today's slides, shall we? An entirely unsurprising result is kind of what I've labelled this, because it was, for me, an entirely unsurprising result. We could see this coming. We had big warnings of that at the last weekend's game, as I mentioned. And there was always a fear that if Arsenal went a goal down, that they would very much struggle to find a way back into the game. Before we conceded, it was very, very poor. It didn't look like we were creating any clear-cut opportunities to score. There were kind of half chances here and there. And for that reason, obviously, the result in the end isn't a surprise. The lineup, you listened to my show yesterday. I said I didn't want to see Mikel Merino start up front. I started Raheem Sterling. In my view, it was the option I would have gone for. And it's not like a prophecy or that Raheem Sterling is a amazing footballer all of a sudden that should have started because he was, worse. He was still pretty darn poor when he came off the bench. But I felt as though that Merino offered Arsenal something from the bench against Leicester, and that was kind of it. He's offering you something in the box at the end of the game when the other opposition side are sitting back and absorbing pressure and looking to kind of close out the draw. In this case, would have been to close out the win, and so he would have offered Arsenal something. But starting him in that position, it was a midfielder playing out of position. He didn't play like a striker. He drifted into wide positions, and I think I've got a slide from later, so maybe we'll focus on that more. But the lineup, that's the only real gripe I had with it. I didn't have an issue with Calafiori starting, even though he had a bit of a nightmare. I did have an issue with Timber starting because White's not yet fully fit. That's why I only came on for the last 8 minutes of the game. I think everybody else there, you start. It's as simple as that. I think the performance overall was just simply not good enough with the players that were there on the day. The goal that we conceded, as I mentioned, we had a few half chances. Ironically, Merino's best contribution wasn't an attempt at goal. His best contribution in the game was to play an excellent pass to Declan Rice, who, obviously didn't take advantage of the opportunity that was presented to himself at all. The defending for the goal is deplorable. How we allow Aaron Wan-Bissaka to run as far up the field as we absolutely do is nuts. And then Calafiori, similar to his defending against Brentford, you may remember the goal that Brian Mbeumo scored where he kind of cut inside shot and Calafiori did very little to stop him. It was really poor defending then, and it was poor defending here from Calafiori. He's a better defender than this. We've seen some really good defensive work from him this season in games. And I'm surprised that these two moments have kind of emerged. Calafiori, I didn't have an issue with him starting because I thought Myles Lewis-Skelly would have been the better choice against Forest. Doesn't matter now because he's going to be suspended for that game. We'll talk about that in a bit. But Calafiori, very poor. Very, very poor indeed. And definitely at fault, as was, I feel, Gabriel and Declan Rice don't cover themselves in glory with dealing with the cross. I don't think David Raya can really be blamed in this moment for the consolation of the goal. But defensively, they both of them failed to realise the danger early enough and to get into the right positions to help stop the cross. And Bowen's got an absolute tap in, and that was kind of that. I never had any confidence that Arsenal were going to score after we conceded. I think I wrote down a little note on my paper, as I do, saying 1-0 in brackets prediction full-time score. And yeah, it was overall 3 players didn't cover themselves in glory whatsoever with the conceding of that goal. The other big moment of the game, of course, I'll come on to some individual performances in a second. The other big moment of the game was Myles Lewis-Skelly's red card. There's no debate about this red card. This is a red card all day long. The position of Raya, the position of Saliba on the other side of the field, it's the denial of a clear goal-scoring opportunity. Kudus gets away from Myles Lewis-Skelly. He is scoring. He's either kicking the ball from where he's at with Raya being miles away from his goal, or he's just running through and having either a tap across to Bowen, or he's just scoring himself. It's a red card. There can be absolutely no debate. I was shocked that it wasn't a red card on field. I was shocked that it wasn't a red card on field given by Craig Pawson at the time. I asked Graham Potter myself after the game whether he thought this was an example of VAR being used in the correct way. And he agreed and said that he was shocked that it wasn't given on field. I can't remember who it was I spoke to. I can't give them credit because I've forgotten. But someone said they felt that Craig Pawson didn't give Myles Lewis-Skelly a red because of the red that he got by Michael Oliver, and instead it was kind of left up to the VAR to do that. And Soup says that here. I think the ref was afraid to give a red to Lewis-Skelly, and I kind of agree. I think that the whole fiasco at Wolves, I think, may have played on Craig Pawson's mind. Better to let the VAR review it and then have a second look than make the decision in the immediacy of the challenge. But it was definitely a red all day long. It was a red card. And it's one of those moments where there's an 18-year-old. I'm not going to batter him. Nwaneri didn't have a particularly great game either, by the way. And for the record, Arteta says that he came off because of fatigue, not because of an injury. So hopefully Nwaneri's going to be fine. Myles Lewis-Skelly's 18. Nwaneri's 17. They're playing because they've been able to break into the side this season and they've been given opportunities and they've impressed, but they've also been helped by the fact that we are lacking players, and that's opened up doorways and pathways, as is the case for so many young players as well, across football. That's how young players get opportunities, and when those opportunities come, you have to take them, and Myles Lewis-Skelly and Winery have taken them. They didn't have their best games today at all. I'm not going to batter them like the same way I'm going to batter some of the other players, because some of the other performances of some senior figures in this team were frankly not acceptable. Mikel Merino is not a striker. Shock horror. There was all the tongue-in-cheek of the game against Leicester and the jokes that were made after that. But I said it during the live show. I wasn't convinced that it's the right option, because he's not a centre forward. He's not got the thinking of a centre forward. He's not got the movement of a centre forward. He's got the movement of a midfielder. He's got the movement of a player that moves into and drifts into spaces and finds space in those wide areas and wants to create for his teammates. There were some moments where he tried to kind of be more of a hold-up player, and there was a couple of crosses into the box where he tried to head it back to teammates, which was more of the ilk of what you want to see from a centre forward. But he was so far out of the position that he needed to be in so many occasions. There was that time where Odegaard's being heavily criticised for the run he makes as Trossard goes through. We have no striker in that situation. Where's the centre forward? Like, where is our striker as we're counter-attacking? Not there. Johnny is right. He got absolutely no service, and this is true. And this is where we'll come on to the kind of the creators in the team in a second. But he didn't play the role correctly. And what bugs me as well about Arteta in this situation is that why is Butler-Odegaard on the bench? I think someone in the press room said to me, he can breathe and sit down, and that's why he's there. Butler-Odegaard, I'm not saying is the answer to Arsenal's problems. I'm not saying he's going to come in. He went on loan to Cheltenham and didn't score a single goal. I think he went on loan to somewhere further down the league and also didn't score. I'm not saying he's the answer, but I'm saying what's the point of him being there? How demoralizing must that be for a youth player? Yes, 22, sure, but a youth player that you're watching your teammates, you're watching. He's been promoted to the senior squad. He's wearing the training gear of the senior team. It's not like he's still part of that under-21 group. He is considered a senior player at the moment. You're watching your team desperately struggling to score, desperately struggling for a focal point, for a natural centre-forward figure in that side. You have one on the bench, no matter what level he's at, you have one there, and you've not played him. What's the point? If you haven't got any faith in him, put someone on the bench that you're more inclined to use. Because some people might say, oh, well, he's only going to come on if Arsenal are winning 3 or 4-0. I cannot foresee a situation this season in the plight that we are now. You know, we scored 5 against Man City. We had Havertz in that game. Ever since losing Havertz, I cannot see Arsenal being in a position where they're going to be in any kind of scoreline surplus to bring him on. So have a player on the bench that you feel as though could have some kind of impact. That's on Arteta, and I don't know why he wasn't given an opportunity to come off the bench there. Maybe it's because we went down to 10 men, played a part. But even before the red card, I was sitting there and thinking, give the guy a run. What have we got to lose in giving him that opportunity? Nothing. We were losing the game. Nothing. We had absolutely nothing to lose in giving him an opportunity. I thought about asking that question in the post-match presser. I might ask it in the next one. I wanted to ask about January. January wasn't getting asked about. I asked about January. I'll talk to you about that in a bit. Martin Odegaard is not been good enough. He had a decent second half against Leicester, and I praised him for that. He had an awful first half against Leicester. This game was horrendous. I absolutely adore Martin Odegaard as the footballer that I've watched since he's arrived. He's had 2 of the best seasons of an attacking midfield player that I've witnessed in my football supporting life. Particularly the 22-23 season was one of the best seasons of an attacking midfielder that we have seen from an Arsenal player. This season, he's not been good enough. I'm not buying into the bollocks that you see from some cretin saying, take the captaincy away from him, grow the hell up. Recognise what actually is needed in a football team. No, you don't take the captaincy away. But But you do sit the guy down and have a conversation about his contributions. You do sit the guy down and say, look, these performances, this output, this what we're seeing is not it, is not what, and if he needs to be given a break, and I know we are lacking options, but then we might need to change some things around. You may need to take him out of the spotlight. You may need to give him a bit of a break. I don't know if there's more to it that we don't know. I don't know if there's stuff going on that we're unaware of. There might be. There might be more to it because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to see a player of the last 2 seasons that we've seen have an injury. Yes, he suffered an ankle injury this season, and also looking into a position where he's got illness, sure, but I can't make sense of this drop off. I can't make sense of this considerable dip in form. I just can't. It doesn't make sense to me to see how the player that he was, the world, in my opinion, world-class levels of performances that we saw in the last 2 seasons to this. Absolutely nuts. But for the record, those saying he should have the captain taken away from him, you are a discredit to the team. Absolutely categorically. It was probably Declan Rice's worst performance in an Arsenal shirt. I don't know what it is about West Ham. He just seems to melt against West Ham at home. It's really strange that he has these performances against. I really don't get it. I really, really don't understand why he seems to melt against these teams. It's a really strange one. And I look at the performance of last season where he gave away that penalty, and I have absolutely no idea how to make sense of it other than there is kind of an emotional element to it. I just don't understand. I really, really don't get it. And for him to have been brought off so early in the second half, it's not just us that recognise that. The manager clearly recognised that. Harry Symeou asked after the game to Arteta why he was taken off, and Arteta explained that it was for tactical reasons. It wasn't because of an injury. It wasn't because of tiredness. It wasn't because of anything else to do with rest. It was for tactical reasons. He had a bad game. He had a bad game. He had a good game last week. He had a bad game this week. He's probably tired to an extent. He's one of the players that typically tends to play 90 minutes pretty much every single game. He's rarely taken off, and maybe that's contributing. But against West Ham, he just seems to melt, and I don't quite understand it. We need the Rice back that we've seen for so much of last season, that we started to see in January. That Declan Rice, it looked like he was coming back to his best form, but this particular game was a big frustration for me. Arteta owned the defeat after the game. He spoke about how angry he was. He spoke about how frustrated he was. He spoke about, I'll read you his comments. He says, very disappointed, obviously very angry as well. I think you have to congratulate West Ham for the victory and the game that they played, but as well, I think a lot from our side that we never got right, and they didn't allow us to get enough momentum, enough sequence of play, of positive action that could deliver into situations of threat for them. And even though the ball that we had and 20 shots of that, I never felt that we were at the standard and the level that we needed. First of all, to have more threat, and then not to allow them to run, because we lost a lot of balls that we allowed West Ham to run in very dangerous positions. We were really loose with our passing. The only player I actually thought held up any kind of the only player I thought was any decent was Partey. I thought Partey was the only one really progressing the play, moving the ball forwards. He was the only player in the team I looked at and went, yeah, he's had a decent game. Everybody else, there was issues. Every single other player had problems, made mistakes. Maybe other than Raya, there is that moment at the end of the game where Raya does that little run and back heel after being up from the corner, which did bring me a slightest little pinch of joy. But beyond that, I really couldn't give much credit to anybody. I think we all know why we are where we are. I think we all can pinpoint the moment where Arsenal's season probably has died. And that's January. And Arteta was very, very vocal throughout the January window that he thought we were short and that he wanted us to sign a centre forward. And so I asked him the question. I asked him, you were very vocal in the January window about how you felt about how we were short. Merino is up front today. Do you feel like the fact that there was a struggle to score vindicates in some way why you were so vocal about wanting a second striker? And he said, no, no, no. Honestly, again, I think we have to look in the mirror of ourselves, of what we can do better, what we have done, and the will and the desire and the way that we run, the way that we want it. Zero question about that. But at that level, this is not enough. You have to deliver, and it has to be with a lot of quality to break a really good team down, to win many more games than we have done, and to put actions that can end up in threatening moments for the position to win games. And today we haven't done that. There's two schools of thought I've got with this. The first thing is that I think it's a protection answer. I think it's I don't like the word, but it's a bit of a PR answer. I would have loved for him to just instead of saying no, 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 I would have liked him to have said yes, yes, we are short, and the injuries that have hit us. I think there was an element of him that didn't want to sound like he was making excuses. Let me find. There was another. Yeah. Ed Aarons asked about the kind of the anger. Ed asked the first question, and then about the anger. He says, "Yeah, we have to be angry. I hope we are very much because we didn't hit the levels today, and I'm very much responsible of that. So I'm very, very angry." I think it was Jordan who said, "I think people will look at the forwards and the injuries and think, oh, that must be why. Is that it?" And he says, "No, no, and I refuse that completely because I am talking about the standards of the players and the team that we played today, me included, and that was nowhere near the levels that we have to hit to have the opportunity to win the Premier League today. No, we were very consistent, yes, but football is about what you do today, and today we're nowhere near." So he was asked a question about the injuries and the lack of forwards, and he says, "No, I refuse that completely." Like, clearly, he doesn't want to be seen, rightfully, as making excuses, which is the right thing to do. You don't, and I've called Arteta out before for I feel not taking accountability. I felt after the game against Manchester United that he didn't take accountability enough. So I can't then complain that he does then take accountability in another press conference because he did that. But I still felt somewhat frustrated that the opportunity was there to say, yes, we are short. Yes, there is now a chance for regret. Because I remember there was an answer, I think, where he said after the January window, we will know at the end of the season whether or not it was the right decision. Well, we know now. We knew 8 days later. We knew 8 days later because Havertz got injured and left us with nobody. And this is where I start to fear that he could walk at some point. He's got a contract for another 2 seasons, so I don't necessarily think he's going to resign, but he's not been delivered what we know that we needed. There's people behind the scenes who have not delivered Arteta the player that we know that we needed. I'm hugely critical of what we didn't do in January. Hugely critical of that January track. It was an utter diabolical, colossal failure of a window. There were players that moved, players that went on loan that we could have made big plays for. Love Me Forever says, wow, thank you, Tom. You have woken up today. No, I haven't woken up today. I've been saying this for weeks. I was saying in January, if we didn't do any business, it would be a failure of a window. We didn't do any business. And the day after that window closed, I was sitting here saying this window was a failure. I've been saying it for weeks that this season has been undermined by what we didn't do. There was an opportunity here. I'm not sitting here and saying that I think there was a player necessarily that could have taken Arsenal to the title in January. I don't necessarily think there was a signing that we could have made in January that is a difference between, yes, Arsenal can now win it, and no, Arsenal are definitely not. But I definitely think that Arsenal could have done something to give themselves a better opportunity, to give themselves more of a chance. That's what we didn't do. And that's the negligence for me. That's the negligence of the window, is not recognizing that we have to find something, because if we were to lose Havertz as we now have, we were in a horrendous position. And if Arsenal do fall out of the top 5, which they shouldn't do, because you would hope by the time that Martinelli and Saka come back that we can weather this period, that we've got winnable games still. Yes, we've got to go to Old Trafford. Yes, we've got to play Chelsea. Yes, we've got to go to Nottingham Forest on Wednesday. So I wrote a piece this morning with the headline, Arteta's got 4 days to save Arsenal's season, pretty much, because he has to find a solution. He has to find a solution. And I asked him after he answered that question about signings, I said, what do you have to do now to change that, to go from where we are now to something different? And he says, first of all, we have to suffer for 24 to 48 hours, suffer and feel the pain, and make sure that we come back on Monday with that bite and that anger still in the stomach. So he's clearly going down the avenue of wanting to take this negative energy that we're going to feel from this game and channel that into an avenging performance on Wednesday. So I think that we are fully expecting to see a energized, pointed, and vociferal display on Wednesday. And if it is a lackluster, tired, blunt performance in midweek, then there will be questions again after that game about how or what happened or why he failed to turn that energy from yesterday, into something more positive. The bottom line is that my expectations of a title collapsed when we lost the players that we lost. Realistically, the idea of Arsenal winning the title against a Liverpool side that have all of their players available is incredibly small. Incredibly small. I have huge anger at the club for not acting in January and doing something to support the manager that he was so public about. I'm frustrated with Arteta that he didn't take the opportunity to say something more than we heard. Yes, I know that the whole media spin side of it, of not wanting to sound like you're making excuses for the result, but I think you can do both. I do think you can do both. I think you can say that we're not good enough, that wasn't good enough, I wasn't good enough, the team wasn't good enough, we made mistakes, we were poor. And equally, I think you can say that and also say, when you're asked that opportunity, to say, yeah, we are short. And there may be that we should have done more then. But the idea of showing that weakness, showing that, I guess the counter to that is that if you say that, then you're opening yourself up for more criticism. But I don't know, maybe it would endear him a bit more. I can see kind of both sides, but I am frustrated that, I am a bit frustrated about that. So yeah, I'm just gutted. Like, I'm absolutely gutted with where we're at. Right, let's go to part 2. Let's see how long I can survive the chat box for. We'll come to you guys and your comments in part 2 right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle some of your questions, your thoughts, your theories, your queries, and more. So if you want to jump into the chat box and drop a capital Q, I'll do my absolute best to tackle some of your thoughts. So let's tackle some. Use a capital Q. It helps them stand out more. So let's tackle some of these. Ashley says, Odegaard, big fan, but that was a terrible, unnecessary flick. Why always deep near the centre back and right backs? You're an attacker, we need goals. Hiding, giving the free kick to Sterling, 80 minutes. Like, what? Sterling has scored some great free kicks in his time. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, he's not in the form, is he, to be taking it? I'm not necessarily sure Odegaard is in the form either to be taking free kicks. We haven't had, a good free kick taker for a very, 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 very long time. Part of me thinks, I don't know why Declan Rice doesn't take more direct free kicks. I feel like he strikes the ball excellently, so I'm not really sure why he doesn't. Obviously, he wasn't on the pitch at that point, but in general, I don't know why he doesn't. Patrick says, I'm disappointed that there's never any flexibility in the formation or strategy. Forget about the lack of players. We're just so predictable every game. It's the same. Why not alter the formation? I hear you, Patrick, and I hear people's comments about the tactics, and I hear people's comments about the strategy or the formation. But I don't really know what else we can do. I'm at a loss here with the kind of the flexibility, because when you are without 4 key attacking players, I don't know what more can really change. We've played a different centre forward than we did against Leicester today. We've brought on Zinchenko in a midfield role, something that fans have called out for an incredibly long period of time. We did that early in the second half. So there is a tactical change, a tweak, a personnel difference, and a change in that regard. We've brought, as in and Lewis-Skelly, of course, came on for Calafiori as well. I would have liked to have seen Jorginho, I think. I would have liked to have seen Jorginho. I feel as though his passing may have helped us. But, people have called for Zinchenko midfield for a very long time. I don't necessarily think Zinchenko had a big impact. I know some people have been saying he did all right. I don't really think he did too amazing, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know what much more he can do, Patrick, to be honest, is my answer there. I don't know what is this golden bullet with the players that are there to change things so drastically that suddenly, all of a sudden, we have fluidity and vigor and clinicalness and edge. I don't know what this unicorn change is. Let me know. Tammy says, who do you think is at fault? Oh, it's for me, I'm looking at Jason Ato. I'm looking at the recruitment team. If you heard Arteta's comments after the Man City game, he said that all of his focus is on Newcastle. His focus as manager is very much on the team. January was an incredibly busy month. We did 17 press conferences. That tells you how many games we had in January. All of his focus was on winning those games. We're Arsenal Football Club. We've got loads of people behind the scenes, some of the best recruiters in the world, supposedly, some of the best scouts in the world, supposedly. The manager's got to manage. The manager's got to take things game by game. You've got to deliver him what he needs. I'm looking at the people behind the scenes. I'm not necessarily even looking at the owner. I know a lot of people are putting energy at the owners, and maybe it won't be a popular opinion for me to say, but they were willing to offer 40 million plus add-ons for Watkins. I know people say that's not a bid that would have ever got accepted. That was their valuation of the player. But that shows you that money was willing to be spent. There was financial capital there that the Cronkies were willing to invest. So if that was there, it's then on those people to work with what the money that was available to us in that window and spend it or use it or find a player, find that solution. They failed at doing that. They failed at finding a player. And I don't like that story. It's not on Sammy Mokbel, by the way, who reported the story. It's an excellent scoop and a really good story. So don't shoot the messenger in this regard. But the story that came out from Sammy regarding the club's appreciation and pleasure at the considerative approach of Jason Ato during that, or the work behind the scenes that he has supposedly reportedly have done. I can't. That is where you can point the finger, therefore, at the ownership. That's where, if they are genuinely pleased about the way in which we approach January, that's where you can point the fingers at the ownership and say, how on earth can you be pleased with that work that's been done? Because clearly it's had a hugely negative impact and effect on the team. Obvious, we're seeing it. It's so clear as day to see that impact of what January has had on this team. It's not debatable. So that's kind of where I'm at. Stephen says, where are you on the ownership? Now you feel that they will show ambition we require in the summer. I sincerely believe that we will spend big. You know, there's a feeling, and certainly from speaking to people close to things, they're very confident the club is going to be in a very much more competitive position. The worry I've got is that I was given I had similar conversations at the end of last season. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the business that we did in the summer, while it was important to bring in Calafiori and Merino because we had to improve our left-hand side, the window left much to be desired still. We missed out on Sesko. We didn't go for big players in the end in the forward line that we absolutely needed to. And yes, there wasn't exactly a forthcoming option. But again, we failed to find solutions with what we had before an important season, building on the fact that City and Liverpool hadn't done business at that point, that Liverpool then, obviously that Man City then dropped off. We didn't capitalise on that season, that we finished second. When you finish second and you finish 2 points off the leaders, we're expecting something big, and we didn't. And yes, the window wasn't great for any big team, any elite club, and that's why we spent more than Liverpool and Man City combined in the summer. But there's definitely a reason that people can be frustrated to the fact that we didn't or weren't able, for whatever reason, to capitalize on that. So yeah, I'm still hopeful that, of course, in the summer we spend big. But my gripe with the owners is that they're supposedly, according to Sammy's report at least, pleased with the approach that we took in January, which doesn't fill me with excitement or what's the word? Gratification, I guess, is the term. Soup says, do you not think that our players at times looked caged by a style of play? I mean, what do you want to see differently, right? That's what we have to ask. This whole style of play thing, we had 20 shots in the game. We didn't create any real meaningful chance still. That Ben White had a really good opportunity. Declan Rice had a really good opportunity in the first half. They didn't take those chances. But Merino didn't have a great opportunity at all throughout the entire game, and he's the centre forward. So you've not created a meaningful chance for that centre forward. You have to look at Odegaard. You have to look at Waneri, of course, but I'm really conscious of doing that at a 17-year-old. You know, I'm stopping short of that. There are players that are far more senior than him that you have to point to: Odegaard, Trossard, Rice, Merino himself, Sterling when he came on. You have to look at these more senior figures than you do. Michael says there's no urgency in the attack. We don't look like we're hungry. I guess what I would like to see is someone like Kieran Tierney perhaps brought on, and just in those moments where you're desperate for a goal, bring on your best crosser of the ball. Bring on the best crosser of the ball and get balls into the box to a guy that can score headers like Merino. That's what you need to do. That's what some of the best teams in the world have done. How many times have we seen Sergio Ramos score a header from a desperate cross in a Champions League final? How many times did we see Manchester United use Fellaini to win them games in big moments? How many times have we seen just the kitchen sink thrown by elite level clubs in times of dire need where you need a goal? I never got the sense that we were throwing the kitchen sink at the end of that game. I never got that sense. By the subs that were made, I know Waneri had to come off, he was fatigued, but we brought on Sterling for him. But we could have, and I know we were down to 10 men, which obviously didn't help either, and perhaps that provides some context. But I never felt that we were throwing our kitchen sink at things. I really never felt that was happening. It never felt like that, and we're lacking I just personally think we're lacking the options to be able to do it. I know I've mentioned Tierney there, but that's a real last resort. Merino's a last resort, and he's starting. You know, we lack the ability to change things up. You look at Villa, right? Villa against Chelsea. Marco Asensio signed on loan in January. No, I'm a big fan of Marco Asensio. I've followed his career from when he was back in Mallorca. And I don't necessarily think that he takes Arsenal to the title. But if you sign Marco Asensio on loan, you can move Trossard through the middle. So maybe again that was something that was certainly would have been better than nothing. You know, there's no one that can argue that signing nobody was better than signing Marco Asensio on loan, for example. Colomani, Alvaro Morata, Andre Silva. You know, players moved on loan, they didn't go for them. Or at least they didn't make a big enough play for some of them. Matthias Tell, of course. You know, I think obviously you wanted more guarantees about playing games, but my goodness me, Matthias Tell he'd be starting every game until the end of the season, would he not? Matthias Tell, he would be starting every single game. So yeah, it's unforgivable. If Jason Ato is appointed Arsenal sporting director, it's a genuine, real concern. Because what message does that send? What message does it send that you can have the worst transfer window of the manager's tenure? Because that's what it is. That January window is the worst transfer window of the. I'm trying to think of it's the worst transfer window since the Petr Cech window in 2016. It's the worst transfer window since that transfer window. By a country mile. It's the worst one. So if you've had the worst transfer window in 8 and a bit years, how can you then look at the work that was done or not done and make a decision to potentially appoint somebody off the back of that. I just think it's unjustifiable. I just don't see how it could be just, and that's when you. While my mind is not necessarily with the ownership, it's more with the people that were doing the recruiting. Josh Kroenke, Stan Kroenke, they're not recruiters, but they are the people that delegate those roles. They are the people that are responsible for the people that make those decisions. And that's where my concern is that if you then look at the body of work there of what's been done in the most important transfer window, arguably not for a very long time. We've had important transfer windows and we have delivered, but it's a really important transfer window. You're the interim position. I'm sorry, I've just got a lot of real negative energy at the moment about this, and I know that people come here and you want objectivity and groundedness, but I feel like I am still being objective about and directing this anger and frustration, because I am angry, I am frustrated. The journalism hat is very much off. Like, I'm talking as a fan here, and I'm talking with anger and frustration. Once this show is done, I'm putting Arsenal in the box and not coming back until tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my Sunday, and that's an ability that I recommend you learn how to achieve, because it's not easy, but it's something that you absolutely need to try and do. Helps when you've got a very happy block trigger finger as well. I recommend that to anyone. I have to. I didn't really want to talk about this, right? But some of the vitriol yesterday was disgusting. I did share some of it in the Discord service, and I probably shouldn't have done. And I know you tell me to ignore it, and I know you tell me not to talk about it. I know that you don't want me stewing on it. But what really, really got to me yesterday, still debating whether my mind is about whether to mention it or not. What really got to me yesterday is how personal it was yesterday. Like, how personal it got yesterday. And to kind of like come away from that, and because all I do is give my opinion, right? That's all I do. I just give my opinion about the club. I give my opinion about the team. I give my opinion about windows. And I really don't get how that is worthy of some of the horrid comments that have been directed in my way as a result. I just don't understand. I really don't quite get how anyone could come to be typing out the messages that I read yesterday and press send and think, yeah, I'm really glad I've done that. I'm really glad I've sent that message. It's staggering. I'm not going to say it. RDM says the club was looking for perfect players in the deal, or maybe the owners didn't want to appoint anyone unknowingly. Some of us are devil's advocates for the owners. Fans, please be fans. Owen says we stood Big Gabby up top for 10 minutes and never once launched the ball towards him. Lenny says I can't believe Villa are signing better players than us. And Villa are 7th. I mean, I'd rather be 2nd. If we have a greater look at kind of like the signings that we've made over the last few years, maybe this is the best way to end the conversation of today. I am gutted, right, with being where we are. My frustration about kind of the talk about Arteta is that I don't think he's got enough credit for putting us where we are. We lost Saka in what, November? This is our first league defeat since we've lost Saka. In that time, since we've lost Saka, we battered Manchester City 5-1. We finished 3rd in the Champions League table. We won in the North London derby. We went to Brentford and won a really difficult game. We got to the semi-finals of the League Cup without him. Bearing in mind, we've also lost other players in this time and had other ridiculous decisions go against us since that defeat. So I'm really struggling with, and I know that there's some that just use these opportunities to grab a stick and beat the coach. I get it. I really do get it. But I just don't think there's enough credit going in that direction, to be honest. I really don't think there's enough credit going in that direction. I don't really quite get how we can sit 9 points ahead of Manchester City, having battered them 5-1, be 2nd in the table, having lost our 4 main attackers, be bare bones, the manager come out in January and not be delivered despite being so vocal about what he wanted and not being given it. And I don't quite get it. Same way as our captain has been voted the player of the year for the last 2 seasons. He has a bad season, and there's some cretinous people out there that want to take the captaincy off him. Like, what's the fandom in that? Like, what's the support in that? How is anyone looking at themselves in the mirror as a fan and thinking, yeah, I'm being a fan? Maybe it's just the social dynamic of what 2025 is these days, which is obviously horrendous. We know social media is a horrible, horrible place, being made worse every single day. But I don't quite get it. I really don't quite get it. Falla says, Tom, you always give it, so be ready to take it. Yes, I always give it. What a horrible human being you are. James says, I'm a fan of Arteta, but let's be honest, his time is running out, whether he like it or not. We have to get this summer right to give him the chance to compete. I guess that where I'm at with like his time running out is like his time running out is of his own accord. For me, if Arteta's time is running out, it'll be because of his decision, not the hierarchies, not us as fans, his. If I was in Arteta's position, taking my Arsenal hat off and thinking about it as a manager, if I'd have taken this club to where I have taken this club, back into relevancy, back into title challenging, back into beating the biggest sides in the world, battering them in some cases, and I am this close from getting there, and we know what we need, and I'm not given it, why on earth would I stay? Because the fact of the matter is, no matter what the biggest critics of Arteta will think, if he was to leave Arsenal, he would have the biggest clubs in the world, if they were looking for managers, sending in requests immediately. Without question. Like, him and Xabi Alonso are currently the 2 best young coaches on earth. No debate. The 2 best young coaches on earth, no debate whatsoever. And if the biggest clubs on earth were looking for a new coach and he was to leave Arsenal, he would get a job like that. It wouldn't even be, it wouldn't, unless he wanted to take a year out or whatever, like Pep did or whatever, which who could blame him after the ridiculousness of this kind of situation, they would be all over him. He is not the problem. He is not the issue with where we are at. He is the reason why Arsenal have put us in a position where if we don't win a league, we're disappointed. He's put us back into that position. And unfortunately, he is not being given the tools. And of the tools that we have got, they've been taken away from him, sadly, through. I know some people want to say that he's played some of them into the ground, but I really don't think we've had much of a choice. And also with some of the craziness that we've experienced as a club over the last 3 seasons. If you swapped Arne Slot and Mikel Arteta, and I use this example all the time, if Arteta and Slot swapped places, Liverpool would still be top. I don't necessarily think Arsenal would even have as many points as they have now, to be honest. I think we'd probably be slightly further down than where we are right now. So yeah, there you go. Jamsey says, we're using teacher analogies now. As a teacher, you'd respond differently to your A grade student getting a C than you would your D grade student getting one. Arteta has made us expect A's, but has been delivering B's. Okay, let's use your analogy. Okay, you've got a student, right, that you know has the ability to get an A grade, and they're getting a B grade. You got to look at that situation and think, why is that happening? Is it on them? Are they making mistakes? Or is it outside factors? While they were doing an exam, did their pen break and they not have a backup? So they couldn't answer the rest of the questions. When they were revising, did they have things that were distracting them? Did they have things that are interrupting that process? Did they not have the best resources available to tackle those exams? Were they not given what they needed to achieve? Was the teacher not good enough? I think that example, Jamsy, works, but I don't think you're using it in the right way. Because I think we've got an A grade level manager that can produce A grade level results, but sadly has not got the resources, has not been given the resources to what we need to. And people will point out how much we've spent, but you've got to put that in context to how much has been spent around us as well. Yes, we've spent a lot of money as a team on our own, but compare that to how much money has been spent on City and Liverpool since Klopp and Pep took over, and before that as well, where those squads were before those managers took over, and it's night and day. So I get where you're coming from, but I think you've got the analogy twisted in the wrong way, and it doesn't necessarily fit in this case. Ahmed says, even the best teams don't usually challenge for the league for 3 seasons in a row. That's why Man City are a bit of an anomaly. Liverpool didn't do it. I mean, Liverpool, the season that, if you have a look at the season where they had their awful injury crisis, league finishes, let me find that season. In the season that Liverpool had that horrendous spate of injuries where they lost, like Diaz was gone, Salah was missing for a bit. I think Trent was injured out for a while. They had Naby Keita out for like the whole season. I think Van Dijk might have missed some games. They finished, where did they finish? They finished 5th in the league, 22-23. They finished 5th in the table after dealing. And by the way, those injuries, for my money, were not as bad as the injuries that we've had to deal with this season. So they finished 5th. They went out the FA Cup in the 4th round. They went out the League Cup in the 4th round. They won the Community Shield, and they went out the Champions League in the last 16 during that 22-23 season. They had suffered so many problems. And as a result, they went into the market in the following window, and they spent quite a bit on players. They brought in Alexis McAllister. They brought in Dominic Szoboszlai. They brought in Wataru Endo, I think. They obviously tried to sign Moises Caicedo as well. Ultimately failed to do so. So they reacted to that season. They reacted to that season where they had a catastrophic injury hit campaign, which meant they finished 5th and went out of the cups really early. And it was just a really terrible campaign overall for Liverpool. Arsenal this season have had, in my opinion, worse luck when it comes to injuries, worse luck when it comes to refereeing decisions. We've got to a League Cup semi-final. We're sitting 2nd in the table. And that's again, I think, is another example of where I don't think the credit is being given enough. I just think the expectations have gone so hypersonically hyperbolized that people aren't keeping their feet on the ground and being realistic about this. And that's just kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm at. Basher says, Tom, the manager lost with a full available squad against Villa last year twice. That's obviously not true. If you're saying to me that we had no injuries for those 2 games, that's not true, Basher. And this is the bigger problem at times, is that ultimately we are given misinformation, and misinformation spreads very, very quickly, and people believe things that aren't true. Alexander Zinchenko was suffering with a horrendous spate of form when we lost 1-0 away at Aston Villa. And the one player that we could have had that was playing well and then got a calf injury that could have covered him in that game was Takehiro Tomiyasu, of course, and missed that game for injury, and that was incredibly frustrating. I don't think Thomas Partey was fit for that game either. Rice, Havertz, Odegaard in midfield. Partey's not on the bench. Partey wasn't available for that game. So this is what I mean, Basher. Like, it's all well and good having opinions, but it's not true, is it? So, and this is the question I have for fans such as Basher here. If you hold these opinions and then you subsequently find out that opinion that you held turns out not to be true, the evidence there is right in front of your face, are you still going to hold that same opinion, Or are you going to go, fair play, I was wrong? For instance, in January, I was a little bit against the idea of signing Marco Asensio. I was wrong, guys. I would have rather signed Marco Asensio on loan and not signed anybody. And says Basher got bashed. It's not about bashing somebody here. I'm not attacking Mohamed's opinion here. I'm questioning where that information comes from. I'm questioning how people get into a place where they formulate these opinions, have these opinions that are categorically inaccurate and not true. And then I'm not saying, because to be fair to Basher, he's not responded yet. And in some ways, will just categorically still believe that, even though we know and we've just shown there that that's not the case. I'm curious what the home game, what was it? Was it 2-0 or 1-0? I feel like it was 1-0, but in my head, I'm thinking it was 2-0. It was 2-0. What was the lineup that day? Trossard, Jesus, Saka, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard. Partey was on the bench, but he didn't come on. Was he not fully fit for that game? Zinchenko, White. Are we missing anybody in that game? Odegaard, Rice, Havertz, Trossard. Is Martinelli on the bench? Martinelli was on the bench. So, yeah, I mean, for that home game, I mean, other than maybe not a fully fit Partey because he was on the bench, didn't play, you could argue there that we had a fit team. Trossard scores that chance in the first half, and I think we probably win that game. But the away game, obviously, that's clearly not the case. And I think, again, that is probably a nice place to end today's show. There's a lot of misinformation that gets spread around. Timber's ACL, yeah, you're right as well. Any game last season, we were without £40 million worth of investment from the summer that we wanted to have and obviously didn't have. So that was gutting as well. I think the right way to end this show is that, again, always, please look after yourselves. There's some horrible people out there that try and put you down, me down, everybody down, and say some pretty horrible things. Football's just a game. It's a hobby. It's an interest. It's something that I enjoy watching. It's my job, which is an amazing thing and a great privilege. But as soon as this show is done, I'm going to open a box and I'm going to put Arsenal inside it, and I'm going to close that box until tomorrow morning when I come back and talk to you again. And so for that reason, oh, goodness me, reading the chat box, still some horrible people in there. And just try to look at things with facts. Don't fall for misinformation that spreads like wildfire. Don't get convinced about things and let things run away from you. Look at it objectively. Look at things in the reality of where we are. Yesterday sucked. It sucked because we lost. It sucked because we predicted it was going to happen. It sucked because we've been let down in January by the people that could have done stuff and didn't back the coach and didn't bring in the players that we needed. And as a result, we probably weren't going to win the league anyway. But the reality is that we had to do something and we didn't. And I'll just address this last one from PW. It says, you were not happy about signing Watkins. I personally have had someone messaged me about this yesterday on Twitter. It's the pancakes and waffles analogy again that PW, unfortunately, you've fallen for. If somebody says one thing, it doesn't mean they suddenly don't like another thing. Just because I says that Watkins wasn't personally my choice of who I wanted as centre forward, and I would have personally been disappointed if our big investment on a centre forward went on Watkins, it doesn't mean that I don't think we shouldn't have done anything, though, does it? So let's be fair about this. If I'm saying that I'm disappointed about a player because I think we should personally be going to invest our big money centre forward signing on somebody else, it doesn't mean that I suddenly think that it's a case of, oh, I'd rather have signed no one. Of course I'd rather have signed Watkins than nobody. Of course I'd rather that. Of course I'd rather that. But I would be disappointed that the big investment of a centre forward would have gone on him because I wanted somebody else. My disappointment was more about the fact that we didn't do anything and that we didn't bring in that temporary figure. So I hope you got the magnanimity to be able to respond to that. in kind. I will speak to you all, of course, on Monday morning. Enjoy your Sunday. I imagine a lot of you will be watching the Liverpool-Man City game. I'm probably not going to do that. I'll probably catch up on it, to be honest. I would have watched it had we have won yesterday, because it would have been a great opportunity to see that gap close. But there's a chance that the gap could open considerably. There's a chance that Man City start closing up to us as well, which is also another reality we've got to be aware of. So nothing good can really come out of that game for me. So I'm probably not going to watch it live, and I'll catch up on the big talking points and the parts in the game that I need to afterwards. On my day off, I'm going to go for a walk, touch grass, I think is the phrase. So we're going to go and do that. Apologies for the lack of enthusiasm today, and not being a particularly most enjoyable show, most likely. But yeah, I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your weekend. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.